Welcome to Football Today Team Profiles and Projections. And today we are looking at the New Orleans Saints. Came in our power rankings at 24th after a 9-8 season. You look at some of the overall stats on the Saints team, and you forget that this team went 9-8, right? You know, this team was top 10 in both scoring offense and defense. They were ninth on offense, eighth on defense. You know, EPA per play, they were 14th on offense, fifth on defense. The same record as the division winner Bucks, who everyone's high on. They did all of this with an awful offensive line and a defense that is returning essentially everybody. And they were 9-8 while losing to the Packers, Texans, Lions, and Rams by one possession or less. I guess there is no less than one, but less than 7 points. Justin, I'm not expecting great things for the Saints, but this is not a bad football team. This is a good defense.
This is not a bad football team, but I think this is a football team that had a lot go right for them last year. They had a cakewalk of a schedule. They play in the NFC South, so they still have an easy schedule last year. They stayed relatively healthy, and they were really positive in the turnover margin. And I think there are some elements where if you look at the Saints, you mentioned all the stats that they're good in. And it's all the questions are offensively, by the way. Defensively, I think they're still a top 10 unit. They're going to remain a top 10 unit. But the thing with the Saints is that offensively, they're running it back. And I think in a way they got worse because there's major questions about their right tackle, Ryan Ramczyk, who may miss the entire year. So in a way, not only are they running it back, I think they got worse. So it's great that they're running it back defensively since they're already that good. But I think there is massive room for regression on the offensive side of the ball. And that's where I get very concerned with the New Orleans Saints.
We'll talk about it all. This is Dennis Allen's third season as their head coach after being their defensive coordinator for 7 years. Here's one reason why I think the offense is going to get better. Clint Kubiak is their offensive coordinator. They fired Pete Carmichael, who had been with them since 2006 and their offensive coordinator since 2009. Clint Kubiak was with the 49ers passing game coordinator last year, the Broncos the year before, then the Vikings OC. Their defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, his second season after, being the Browns defensive coordinator. So some of the offensive numbers, I do think overall the offensive numbers won't be as good, but I also think some of the numbers are just not telling the full truth on that offense, right? Like Derek Carr had 25 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. The first 12 games, he had 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and then 21st in EPA per play. And then in the last 5 games, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 11th in EPA per play. I think from beginning to end of the season will be better, but it's not going to be like what that offense looked like at the end, those last 5 games of the year. Those aren't telling the truth on this offense. Derek Carr was disappointing, his first year at the Saints, despite the fact that his box score stats aren't bad.
Yeah, I mean, they were 3-4 after the first 7 weeks of the season, and the only 3 wins that they had against the Titans, Panthers, and Patriots, all 3 teams which fired their head coaches. They lost to the Texans, they lost to the Bucks, they lost to the Packers. So that was the first 7 weeks of the season for them.
Yeah, so the defense is fun to talk about, and obviously we talk about offense on these first, but so let's talk about the offense. They bring in Clint Kubiak. And you're hoping to get better out of Derek Carr, which I think is possible. But it's just, this is not a great offensive unit around him, right? And also, Carr's awful versus the blitz. He's awful versus pressure. And this offensive line doesn't inspire any confidence in you, right? They desperately need Fuaga, their first-round pick, to hit the ground running, at the bare minimum as a run blocker, because the run game has been really bad. Ramczyk, he's, he might be, like you said, totally done. Trevor Penning was awful, and they signed, Udo as depth. Eric McCoy's good in the middle, but outside of that, they just have a bad offensive line, and they're just really relying on Fuaga hitting the ground running. And I think that is what will hold back this. I think it'll be better overall under Kubiak, but I do think this offensive line and the lack of weapons outside of Chris Olave it limits what this offense can do. And the fact that I don't like Carr that much, right? He is someone who just, in the perfect scenarios, perfect situation, he looks good. And when it's muddied up, it looks ugly, right? Just struggling versus the blitz, having, crazy missed throws. And I don't think we're going to see a career year for Derek Carr.
No. I again, I think there's room for regression here. Now it depends on how Kubiak calls the offense. There were trends of 2023 that were good for Carr, and some of the good coaches and better coaches in the NFL, they're better at, hey, let's limit the bad stuff and let's highlight what you can do well and avoid putting you in bad situations. So overall, 14th in offensive EPA, 15th EPA per dropback, 19th EPA per rush. But I find it to be very fascinating when you look at the Saints from an early down perspective, first down, second down, late down, third down, and then also when you view them from the red zone. It's very fascinating because on early downs, they had overall they were ninth in EPA per play on offense, fourth in EPA per dropback, 23rd in EPA per rush. And, Alvin Kamara had like a mini suspension towards the beginning of last year. Jamal Williams was not very good. And then even Kamara kind of came back and was not good either. Now, it was concerning in 2023, and I think it's even more concerning for 2024 because you're running that group back. There's Kendre Miller in there for TCU as well, who I liked coming out of TCU, but I don't know if he's going to be a game changer. And you're running that same unit back, and it's the most any NFL team is spending in their running back room right now, where Kamara's cap hits like $18 million, and then I think Jamal Williams' cap hits is a little north of $4 million. So you have two running backs with a ton of resources being poured into that room. And I don't think they're inspiring any confidence on providing somewhat efficient play. Where Kamara last year ranked number 44 in yards after contact, number 37 in explosive run rate, and this is out of 49 running backs with 100-plus rushes. And by the way, 180 rushing attempts, his longest run was 17 yards last year, Bobby. So I'll get your thoughts on that before I maybe get into the red zone.
Well, I do think the run game is going to be better, and that's where Clint Kubiak, I think, is going to make the biggest difference.
Even with the line?
With Fuaga should help, but Kubiak, that's what him and his father do. They instill that zone running offense. They're not going to run any gap runs. They are going to get that zone offense, and it's going to be coached up well. Now, I don't think they have the talent to do it really, really well. I think McCoy and Fuaga will be good in the run, and the rest will struggle. But they were worse than what their numbers. Like you said, they were 19th in rushing AP. Well, they were 30th in yards per carry. They were 21st in total yards. So I think it'll be better. But it's, I don't think they're going to be a good rushing offense, but I think it'll be better than what it was last year with Kubiak in there.
Okay, that's fair.
And I think that's a scheme that fits Kamara, right? Like that's where he kills you, the cutbacks, and that's what a Kubiak scheme is looking for, the zone cutbacks. And that's fair. That's where Alvin Kamara is his best.
But I'm just looking at it, and it could be better, but even talking about it from it being an advantage, I mean, Kamara, I love Alvin Kamara. Like it's a player that, hey, a guy that wasn't drafted high and he comes up and he's one of the examples that us stupid analytics people be like, see, you don't need to spend a lot of resources on a running back for him to be good. So I've loved watching him throughout the years, but just every single year, it's just been a decline. And then the cap hit's gotten higher. So from a team building perspective, that part of it hasn't been fun. I want to talk about the red zone now with Derek Carr, where weeks 1 through 7, it became like a meme where 30% of drives, Saints, they reached the end zone. And then 37% of them, they scored touchdowns. It was bad. It was really bad, man. Now, weeks 8 and on, 32% of the drives reached the red zone. 64% of them scored, which was crazy. Their goal-to-go efficiency skyrocketed as well, from 55% through week 7 up to 83% after that. And one of the big changes that they made, Bobby, I love talking about personnel. They went from having 11 personnel, running 11 personnel in the red zone, and really giving those 58% of targets went to wide receivers, and 11% of the targets went to tight ends. And then after that, weeks 8 and on, 31% of targets went to wide receivers, and 31% of targets went to tight ends. And it worked. It worked. Running more 12, running more 13. It worked. Taking receivers off the field, keeping Chris Olave on the field. But also what was most important is they put Taysom Hill on the field. And in the first 7 games, Hill had a total of 18 plays inside the 30-yard line, and he just scored 1 touchdown. And in his final 8 games, Hill had 30 plays inside the 30-yard line and scored 6 touchdowns. Bobby, when the Giants played the Saints later in the year, I talked about how, Taysom Hill, weird player, what is his role in the NFL? But damn, when he's on the field, good shit happens, and numbers are fun, and numbers are good, and that continues to be backed up.
Oh
It's
yeah,
weird.
they like when Taysom Hill's on the field, he's good. I think he was like third on their team to scrimmage yards um after Kamara or Olave and Kamara. So yeah, like put like continue to do that type of stuff, and I do think they're going to do more 12 personnel, right? Like again, like this is a lot of Kubiak stuff, and they don't have the personnel to really spread it out wide, right? Like they just don't have that in the receiver room. Chris Olave is on his way to being one of the more like if the Saints will just have like another quiet season, like Chris Olave is like here's something. Chris
Yep.
Olave had a better rookie season than Garrett Wilson on a per game basis. Chris Olave was better, and then last year he had 80. And last year he was too. He had 87 catches, over 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, and I think that he's someone who has a lot of opportunities missed. Right, like you said, the third down stuff. There's a lot of times where Olave is open on third down, and you just see Carr miss him. Right, like down the field too, not just little quick stuff. Like Chris Olave, he was my favorite guy coming out of that class. And he continues to be. Like, if you ask me would I rather have, Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, I would take Chris Olave. And that's not a knock on Wilson. It's just how good I think Olave is. The issue is that they don't have like Rashid Shaheed. I know he's like kind of a fun player, but I just don't think he's someone you should rely on as your number two. Like, I don't think you're in a good spot receiver wise if he's your number two.
You think he's a little bit more gadgety?
Jawan Johnson and Foster Moreau are tight ends. Huh? Say it again.
You think he's a little bit more gadgety?
He can do gadgety stuff, but he's not, just a gadget player. He's just not what you want in a number two wide receiver, especially when you see like some of the receiving groups around the NFL. It just to me puts a little bit of a ceiling on this offense with the offensive line that they have. But like you said, get Taysom Hill on the field, and I think the run game will be a little better. They're not going to do a lot of play action. I actually went and looked at it. Like Derek Carr had the lowest amount of play action in the NFL last year. The lowest, at 14%. Kubiak has always been middle of the pack, which I think they'll go up a bit like that. Carr and Carmichael had always been bottom of the league. So I do think they'll get some more stuff like that. And then also they have the personnel to do some play action stuff, right? Where Olave is going to get the attention. You have A.T. Perry, this tall, speedy receiver who can create big plays, and then Shaheed, who you can do some stuff with. Like I think they have the personnel to do a little more, under center play action. So I think this offense, like I said, they were ranked 9th last year. They're not going to be ranked 9th this year. But I think when Saints fans, even if they're ranked 13th or 14th, will feel better about this offense this year than they did last year.
Yeah,
because it's the last 5 games really, changed the numbers on stuff, and I don't think we're expecting to see those last 5 games of the year.
Right, and the challenge is can you continue to keep the turnovers down on the offense? Because that was one thing that really went in favor for them last year. Their defense forced turnovers as well, and that's something that could fluctuate year to year, where if you're not plus 11, 12, 13 in that turnover margin and that turnover ratio, and then it gets closer to 0, and then, one of the reasons, 2022 Saints were a year that was kind of riddled with bad luck for them, where they were really minus in the turnover, category, and that's one of the reasons why they had that record. So, and play action is going to be interesting with Kubiak because I feel like it really has to remain like you can't have these play action rollouts with Carr. You have to keep Carr in the pocket because with a clean pocket and inside the pocket, he has good numbers. And when he's under pressure, like you said, under pressure and then also outside the pocket, he just panics, man, and it's bad stuff, and it's not good. And even 3rd and 4th down, if you get him into 3rd and longs, get him into 4th down situations, that's how you're going to win as a defense. Get the Saints into 3rd down. If they're going to run the ball, they're not going to be efficient, and they're going to put Carr in bad spots on 3rd down, then that's how opposing defenses are going to win. And I just think that's going to happen more often than not.
Let's talk about their defense.
Yeah, it's fun.
The worst they've been ranked in the last 4 years is 9th in points per game. Since 2017, which Dennis Allen has been there since then, the worst they've been is 14th. And this is why when we talked about, I can't remember what we were doing a head coaching ranking list, I guess by the time this comes out over a month ago. And it's just like, because he's not an offensive coach and the Saints don't make any waves, you're like, Dennis Allen, he's probably going to be a coach that gets fired. But like, I don't know. I think he's consistently done his job well. And tell me what you want better out of this offense with that personnel. right? And I think they even like made an addition of getting not Gary Clint Kubiak and get Pete Carmichael out of the building, but like this starts with the back end. When we did our position group rankings, secondary, I had the Saints second in the NFL. Right, like Marshawn Lattimore is still that guy. He gave up 31 yards per game last year in the 10 games that he played. Adebo, Paulson Adebo had 4 interceptions, led the NFL in forcing completions, and he only allowed 1 touchdown. Alontae Taylor had some rough moments last year, but I really like him. And they brought in Kool-Aid McKinstry, and then you have Tyrann Mathieu, who is still a Swiss Army knife, and he's great in coverage and he does everything really well. So I think when you have a secondary like that, and especially in a division that the NFC South is, like I do think this team's going to continue to get turnovers, right? When you play Bryce Young twice a year, when you play Baker Mayfield, when you play what's the other team that Kirk Cousins will be better, right? So the Falcons will be a tougher test this year, and I'm picking the Falcons to win this division. But I think this secondary is going to continue to be really good, and I think this front can be better, but like they're a really solid group from the front to the linebackers and the secondary. Like,
Yep.
There's really not any weak spots. They need to get more pressure, right? Bottom 5 in pressure rate, 4th worst for sacks.
Yep.
But they have like guys that can do that. Brian Brzee can make a step up this year. Cam Jordan is a better run defender at pass rush's point, but like Carl Granderson had his best season. So you have the guys to get a little more pressure than they did last year.
Yeah, and they were top 7 in interception rate. They were 7th in interception rate. So, I mean, this team is built through their secondary. They have players that can make plays on the football. Alontae Taylor, I'm pretty sure, had almost 20 pass deflections, even though he allows a lot of he's a player that's just excited to me because he makes, he'll allow some chunk plays and he'll allow a lot of catches and targets, but he can make some plays on the football, and he's a fun watch. They got Tyrann Mathieu still. Well, I mean, I think Tyrann Mathieu, how many Hall of Fame players do you think are on this defense? It's Cam Jordan, I think, is a Hall of Famer, right?
I'd have to look into it more, honestly, with Cam Jordan. So I won't say off the top of my head, but I hate doing Hall of Fame stuff.
Demario Davis is a Hall of Famer.
I'd have to go and compare him to other guys because it's not fair. But
I want to talk about Demario Davis for just 1 second, where he's aged like a fine wine. Went from the Jets, I think almost back to the Jets. He was also on the Browns, and now he's been on the Steelers for the last couple of years. Demario Davis, all-pro first team in 2019. And then since 2020, he's been a second team All-Pro AP ever since, every single year. And he is, I think, one of the best, most consistent pass rushers from the interior linebacker spot. I mean, there's just
he does everything great.
5, 6, 7 sacks every single year, and he's a 100 tackle, 90 tackle guy every single year. I mean, and he's old. He's been around forever.
Let me ask you this: Fred Warner is my linebacker 1. You probably had the same. Where would you rank Demario Davis in the game now?
He's top 5.
I think it's either 3rd or 2nd. It's who do you like more, Roquan Smith or Demario Davis? I would go Roquan right now. But Demario Davis is my number 3 linebacker in the NFL.
78 pass rush snaps. This is crazy too.
It's not like Willie Gay to it too.
It's not like they're telling Demario Davis to go after the quarterback, 150, 200 times a year. 78 pass rush snaps, 7 sacks and 3 hits. So, 10 out, out of the 78 pass rush opportunities, 10 impact plays is crazy.
Oh yeah, he's a beast, right? And Willie Gay's been a little bit up and down, with the Chiefs.
I love him though.
I think he's going to thrive here.
Yep.
I really, because he's going to be next to Demario Davis.
Play fast.
Demario Davis can give him the right place, and he's going to play fast. Right? And Pete Werner is no slouch either. The other linebacker that they have, and I think it's a defense from front to back that, tell me the weakest spot on this defense.
I can't. Right?
Like
you said, maybe you want more sacks. You want more sacks, and you want more pressure.
Yeah, it's the interior.
But I think,
their interior guys are weak against the run. That is the weakness of this defense. I'm excited for Brian Brzee. He can make a nice, he had a decent rookie season, but he can make a year or 2 jump.
I have a question for you.
Go for it.
They added Chase Young. We haven't even mentioned him.
Well, let's talk about additions versus losses. They added
Yep.
Cedric Wilson, Olise Mecca Udo, the swing tackle from the Vikings, Chase Young, and Willie Gay. They lost Michael Thomas, Jimmy Graham, Andres Pete, James Hurst, Zach Bond, Malcolm Roach, Isaac Yadam, and Marcus May. What's I mean, is what's going to happen with Chase Young? That contract they did. Here's the thing that's frustrating about the Saints is that it's like they're not. You can't look at them as this like, oh, this team's scrappy, right? They're better than you think because they spend so much money,
Right.
and then they trade up in the draft. Like that's why I think people are just like don't give a damn about the Saints, despite the fact that their defense is really good. They went 9-8 last year. It's just because you have a quarterback that most people don't believe in, probably the people in New Orleans as well. And you're a team that just maxes out the cap space every year, and you've made trade ups for non-quarterbacks. So like I love Chris Olave, cool to have him on the team, but they traded a first round pick to go up and get him. So I think that's why. But but again, Chase Young was their one free agency signing outside of Willie Gay, and like he had surgery, and he's been injured his entire career, right? Like he finally had a healthy season, and then you had have a surgery that we don't know what he's going to do.
It's also It's a 1-year deal, and then he has
That neck. He has that neck surgery,
and then it's a 1-year deal, and it's $9 million in dead money next year, with more void years added on after that.
right? So it just didn't make sense for that guy.
Especially when you still have Cam Jordan. I know he took a decline in sacks last year. His pressures are still
He's
there.
He's going to be a backup.
Yeah, Chase Young is going to be a backup that you signed for 1 year. You're not going to pay a lot for this year, but you're going to pay more money for him to not be on the team after this year, unless I guess they extend him. But
yeah,
I don't know.
So it's like the other signings. I like what they did with the money they had. It's just like Willie Gay's a good signing, Udo's a good signing, Cedric Wilson is a kind of a necessary signing for what the money they had. But the Chase Young one doesn't make sense. Let's talk about their draft class. Tyrese Fuaga, Kool-Aid McKinstry. To me, that's about as, considering where they were, that's about as good as a first and second round as you can get for having the 14th pick and the 41st pick. Like, I'm so interested to see what Kool-Aid's role is on this team, because are they going to put him in the nickel? Like, what are they going to do with Kool-Aid McKinstry? Because I think he's someone who can compete day one. Fuaga, I think, is going to have some issues in pass pro day one, but I think he's going to be an asset in the run game. And then they have 3 5th-round picks of Spencer Rattler, and then 2 guys I don't know, and Bub Means and Jalen Ford, Christian Boyd in the 6th round we know, and then 7th rounder Josiah Ezereem. So like you get 2 guys that are going to come in and play right away, and then again, I'm not going to make judgments on the 2 other 5th rounders I don't know, but Spencer Rattler, who you hope can develop into like a solid backup.
I love that Spencer Rattler pick, by the way. It doesn't mean a lot for them this year, but I like the process of picking him there on day 3, especially knowing, Spencer Rattler isn't, he may not be good in the NFL at all, but at that point you might as well. And that's good. It's a good situation for the Saints. Dude, I want to touch on Kool-Aid before maybe we get to Fuaga, but I mean, what pick did they get him?
41st.
He was 24th on the consensus board and 30th for Dane Brugler. He's 21 and a half, and he has 32-inch arms, and he uses them effectively. Like, I agree with you. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is a player that could have handled, if he had to play right away and go to a certain team, that he could have. He played on Nick Saban's defense. I think he has great footwork and balance. He started as a true freshman in Nick Saban's defense, 25% forced incompletion rate. And hey, that's the identity of the Saints team, right? They have guys that can make plays on the football. They drafted a guy that can make a play on the football too. Low missed tackle rate, didn't miss a game in 3 years. So I love Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's one of my favorite players in this draft. Any thoughts on Kool-Aid? Because I want to get your thoughts on Fuaga and his transition to left tackle.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I love Kool-Aid, right? Like, our team was sitting at pick 47, and he was the guy that I was hoping would somehow fall. He was the guy who, him and Johnny Newton were the 2 names that screamed at you when they fell to the second round. So yeah, and again, he's not going to be rushed to play. If he plays day one, sick, but he's not going to be rushed in there. So which is good for them. Now, here's the thing. I think part of it is probably a Marshawn Lattimore replacement, because Lattimore's contract, he has no guaranteed salary, next year, right? And
Yeah, Lattimore even missed some
s-
games too. So.
right? So if I were them, I would like to keep. I don't. I'm looking at his contract right now, dude. It's so hard to make any decision for this team because of how much they just keep pushing cap into the future.
You know
And
how much
void
cap
years
space
and
they have
void-
next year?
Probably negative, right?
They're in the red. They're in the red of at $88 million.
That's why it's like I want to like this team. Like I like Dennis Allen, and I just feel like for a team they should have more on offense than what they do. But yeah, Talise Fuaga. I don't know if I love moving him to left tackle and starting him day one as a rookie.
I mean, there were rumors of maybe
playing
guard is
guard.
the best place for this guy, and now we're moving him to left tackle.
Yeah, like that's like again, I agree. Like even if he was at right tackle, you're like, man, he might be a guy. Like he reminds you of Elijah Vera Tucker, who
Yeah.
hey, Elijah Vera Tucker played tackle in the NFL and played it well, so I think he can do it, but it could be a very rough rookie year. I could see just good pass rushers just attacking those hands of his and really making him look bad. I think he'll be good in the run game day one. But it could be a rough rookie year for him, and you're getting maybe not as bad as Pening was last year, but you're getting really bad left tackle play and pass protection, and that can lead to. I don't think it's going to lead to like Derek Carr interceptions, but Derek Carr's a guy you can get, the ball out of his hands in the pocket and get fumbles, and like you said, with some of the turnover luck. So that's one where if he does it, I'm thrilled, but I wouldn't expect day one results from Fuaga.
It's so tough to
And I
talk
love the
about
pick,
these.
but it's just
I know. It's
you're
tough to
asking
talk
a lot from him.
Yeah, it's tough to talk about offensive linemen that have a lot of pressure on them year one, especially for interior guys. Even tackles too. It's tough. It's really fucking tough. Not everybody
they're basing like a lot of their offensive ceiling versus floor is based on Fuaga because he's essentially the lone new addition to that offense.
Yeah, Ramczyk. Can I? Am I breaking? I'm breaking the rule of our X factor here. But my X factor.
Let's go to X factors. We're at X factors.
I would have said like, Taysom Hill. But really, the X factor of this team is what are they going to do without Ryan Ramczyk? Like that's the X factor. Like if they can sustain and float above water with Fuaga, and I really don't. One of my takes is I don't know if Pening is going to be good enough to play right now. I think they may have to get somebody else. This may be a post 53-man cutdown day
team
thing.
that signs what's the Cardinals offensive lineman that's a free agent?
I don't know.
But here's the thing: they don't have any freaking money.
No, they don't. Well, they have for this year. They have. Hold, please. They have $12 million this year.
So I'm blanking on the guy's name. He started at left tackle for them last year.
By the time this comes out, he may already be signed, so it may not even matter.
Yeah, that happens too. It happened just with the Jamal Adams stuff.
Yeah. But that's my X factor is Ramczyk is out, and if Fuaga can hold ground at left tackle, and then whoever the hell plays right tackle, I really don't think it's going to be Trevor Pening.
Who's it going to be, Udo?
I don't know. That's more of a reflection on my confidence in Trevor Pening compared to anybody else.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, you can't. It was awful last year for them. So yeah, I don't think anyone has any confidence in those guys.
Who's your X factor?
A.T. Perry. They kind of need someone in the wide receiver room. And then the 6 games at the end of the year when he started actually getting some playing time, he had a 20-plus yard catch in all but one of those games. And he was doing it on 20 passing snaps per game, right? I liked A.T. Perry coming out of Wake Forest, a lot of older prospect, but he's got size, athleticism. I think he can run routes halfway decently. You get someone who can give you an explosive element, and then, Chris Olave is going to give you wins at all 3 levels. Then I think you feel a lot better about this passing game. So A.T. Perry is not a breakout candidate, but like I think he can have 600 to 700 yards.
It's fair. I like Rashid Shaheed too. This is all without Michael Thomas. And I'm going to be like, I would have picked Rashid Shaheed being the number 2 because I think he's also an explosive guy. But now that A.T. Perry's in the mix, I'm interested to see who emerges as the number 2 behind Olave.
Well, all three are going to play.
Right.
Like right now, Cedric Wilson's looked at as a starter, but I would like A.T. Perry to unseat him. Over under 7.5 wins.
Under.
I'm going over.
Okay. Do they finish? So they finish second place in the NFC South?
Yes.
Okay.
And if the Falcons didn't sign Kirk Cousins, they'd be my first place in the NFC South pick.
Okay. Yeah, I just think there's regression. I think is going to hit the Saints hard because they did nothing to improve their offense, and they still have an easy schedule. That's the thing. Like I can't even use they have a harder schedule this year, and they play in the NFC South. So I think under though.
4-1 score losses versus good teams. I have them going 9-8. So I'm rooting for the Saints because everyone's calling them boring, and it's like, well, guess what? You know what's not boring? Winning more games than you lose, and that's what the Saints do. So, all right, that is the New Orleans Saints, and this is Football Today.